Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Thank you all so much for being here. I am very excited to start a new series today that I've been working on for a very long time on modular assets. Now, I've shown you guys a little bit before about how I make modular assets, but I wanted to do kind of a full workflow, show you the full process of creating interior modular assets to create all of the things that you see here, so that we can put this all together and create something like this. So this is just going to be kind of an interior modular hallway that we're going to do. And I really want to show you the full process. So I'm going to do or show you everything that I do in Blender and break it all down for you. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to mention and just kind of talk about before we get into this. So first of all, this is not going to be a complete beginner tutorial for Blender. I will link some videos that I used when I started learning just to kind of learn the basics. I've also done some videos in the past on Blender, still not complete beginner tutorials, but showing you just like very basic things on how to create some small assets and things like that. So I would definitely recommend checking those out and being at least somewhat familiar with how to use Blender before you get into this. But for the most part, I'm going to try to show you everything that I'm doing and walk you through what I'm thinking and everything like that. Now, I am going to be using Blender 4.3. I know that I believe it's 4.5 is the current version. To be honest, I just have been lazy and just have not really upgraded. I don't really believe there's too much different about 4.3 compared to 4.5. And I just have a couple of add-ons that I use that I haven't updated yet, so that's why I'm sticking with 4.3 for right now. But for the most part, this should all be pretty much the same. I will also be using Unreal Engine 5.6. So just keep that in mind. If you're watching this in the future, it's possible that some things might change in the interface or keybinds, things like that. But for the most part, it should be pretty similar. Just keep that in mind if you are watching in the future. Now, as far as add-ons go, I use and recommend everyone go ahead and enable loop tools. It's free and built in. You just have to enable it. I honestly don't really know why it's not enabled by default, but just go into your preferences, add-ons, search for loop tools, and just enable that. Now, there's a few different paid add-ons that I do use, but you absolutely do not have to have these. And I will also walk through how to do everything without these add-ons just to show you. But you may see me use these because they just speed up my workflow and just make things a little bit easier for me. The ones that I use are ZenUV, UV Packmaster, and Blender to Unreal. I'll leave a link to those below. But again, that doesn't mean that you have to have these by any means. You can absolutely do all this without those. I don't even necessarily recommend those unless you're really getting serious with asset creation. If you're just using Blender for the occasional asset, or if you're just creating a couple of assets every now and then, or just modifying assets, you can absolutely get by without those. Now, I've also gone back and forth many times on how to handle this next part. I want to show you guys my full process, but my full workflow involves using Substance Painter. And I know that the majority of people do not have Substance Painter. It's expensive. It's owned by Adobe. I know, I hate them. You can still buy a perpetual license through Steam, which I would recommend if you are going to go that route, instead of having to pay for it monthly. But it is still expensive, and there's a few alternatives, but nothing that I've found really comes anywhere close to the power and ease of use of Substance. I really hate it, but that's just kind of the way it is. I will shout out one add-on that I've been hearing a lot about for Blender. I'm pretty sure it's completely free, called ICU Paint. It's spelled like the letter I, the letter C, the letter U, and then paint. I don't know if it can bake texture maps in the same way that Substance does. I really need to try and play around with it and see what it's like. That's one of the biggest advantages of Substance, in my opinion, is the speed and just ease of use that it makes when creating textures and exporting them directly for Unreal and other game engines. So just keep that in mind. So with all that being said, I'm going to show you two different ways to do this. We're going to mainly be preparing the meshes and UVs for standard, readily available textures that everyone can have access to. So you won't have to have Substance or any kind of additional texturing program to do this. This will just bypass the need for Substance and give you the most flexibility for when you're creating assets, as you can just use any tileable texture that you want. We'll be using CC0 textures from places like Polyhaven and Ambient CG. These are amazing free resources that you can get high quality textures to use in your projects, and they're completely free. You can use them for licensed commercial projects. So they're really, really great resources. Now, I'm also going to show you a workflow that I do use for Substance Painter for those that have Substance Painter and want to, kind of do more what I am doing. I won't go through every single asset because it can be quite time consuming, but it's really kind of the basic same process, just repeated over and over. I may even try to do a high to low poly workflow for a few assets if that's something that you guys would like to see. Just let me know. For the most part, the assets that we're going to create are fairly low poly, nothing too detailed or complex. This is mostly just to save time, and this is really just meant to be a basic introduction to creating and working with modular assets to show you how useful they can be. Okay, and lastly, just really quickly before we get into everything, I just want to thank you guys so much for your support. And if you enjoy what I'm doing here, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it, and it helps me so much. If you want to support me even further, I would love for you to check out the Patreon that I have. You can get early access to these videos as well as monthly assets that I create and give out, project files, all kinds of other stuff there. I just want to give a huge shout out to all of the wonderful, amazing patrons over there that have chosen to support me in that way. It really helps so, so much, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you guys so much. All right, with all that, let's go ahead and jump into it and get started. Okay, so I have gone ahead and collected some references and just from various games, mostly Resident Evil, a few things from ArtStation. I have kind of sketched out a little drawing of the shape that I want, which is obviously just very basic, just kind of this little L shape hallway that we're going to make with a door on each side. We'll make some windows here. And really, the main thing that I'm kind of looking for is I love this kind of classic Resident Evil 1, these hallways here. I think it would be fun to try and do a ceiling like this, where it's kind of curved like this. That'll be a little bit of a challenge, but I think it'll be fun to do. And then for the walls, we're just going to have a regular wall and then kind of this baseboard, or I don't know what you call this part here, but we'll create one of these. I've got some different ideas. We're going to keep it all pretty simple because I don't want this to get too long. It's already going to be long enough. And then if we have time, we might do some just very simple pieces of furniture, maybe like a little table, corner table, those kind of things to put in there. But it's always really important to collect reference and just kind of get some ideas before you jump into actually modeling. I've got a bunch of doors here just from the original Resident Evil to take a look at. So yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, now I usually start with a floor. You can really start with whatever you want, but that just makes the most sense to me. So I am going to go ahead and just start with that. So we're just going to create a cube, and then I'm going to go into front view, go into edit mode, and just go ahead and bring this up to where we have our pivot on the bottom there. And then while we're at it, I want to go ahead and get my pivot in the very bottom corner. I usually go for the bottom left corner, but you can really do whatever you want. You could also leave it in the center. That is really up to you. So let's just go ahead and do this to where we have that. Okay, so right now we just have a 2x2 cube. So let's add, or let's figure out how high we want this to be. Now, sometimes I do literally just a single plane for the floor, but I'm going to try to give everything a little bit of thickness for this. because we're going to be making it modular and because we're going to be using it in Unreal Engine, I want to make sure that we have a little bit of thickness for things like light bleeding in and just giving it enough collision and everything like that. So I think for the most part, I'm going to do a thickness of at least 0.1 meters, so 10 centimeters, which is going to be this line right here. So let's just go ahead and bring this down to where we have that. Okay. So now we've got a 2x2, and generally I want to try and make my pieces be as even as possible. So, when I'm doing a floor, I would usually want it to be like a 2x2 or a 2x3 or something like that. Now, in testing that I was doing for this, I actually created a little bit of a hallway, just kind of playing around, and I realized that doing it this way and making the walls the way that I'm going to make them would really make our hallway a little bit too cramped. So this is just one of those things where I'm saving a little bit of time because I have done some of this in preparation, but I don't want you to think that like, oh, I just know these measurements, off the top of my head. A lot of this is just experimenting, trying things, getting a feel for what works. It's very important to have our, normal human size reference here just to make sure that things are looking right and feeling right as far as the scale goes. So anyway, what I realized was that I'm going to need this a little bit wider, and I'm going to go 2.5 meters on this. So we're going to go out another half meter so that we have that. Now, again, this is not ideal because, when I'm making modular pieces, I would love to just be able to rotate it like this, and then that be just the same length there. But the most important thing to me when I'm making modular pieces is that they can at least snap on a grid of at least 0.1 meters. Or I guess really like, if you want to get down to it, as long as it snaps in like 1 millimeter, then that's fine. But ideally you want to have as big a units as possible, right? All right, so that is going to be my floor. And let's go ahead and rename that as well. So I'm just going to call that floor. Okay, and now let's go ahead and do a wall. Now we're going to start kind of the same way. So I'm going to do Shift A, do a cube, and we're going to go ahead and slide this up. Now, you could do this a couple of different ways as well. As far as where your pivot point is going to be. I have seen it where some people actually move the pivot point to where it's like this, so that it's not actually right on a corner. It's giving you this additional space here to have your floor on top like that. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's really just whatever you think is going to work best for you, or if you're making a game with others, whatever they are going to find the most useful. I generally like to have my pivot point, like I said, at the corner, and then I like to keep it at a single vertex here. So in that case, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to bring it up to where, whoops. Let's see, let me just undo that. So we've got it set there, and my pivot point is right there. Okay, now let's go ahead and bring in this edge to where we have 0.1 here. And with our hallway here, if we go back to some of our reference images, they look like pretty tall ceilings here. Like we can see Chris there, and he's only coming up to about halfway of where this wall is. So if he's 6 feet, maybe close to 2 meters, then that means that this wall here is probably at least 3 to 4 meters. This may be even a little taller than I want. So let's see, if we went to 3 meters, that would be there. Now, another thing that I need to think about, of course, we're going to have kind of a ceiling, a curved ceiling, and then I'm also going to have We're going to have pretty thick molding here. So I think I'm going to go up to about there. So I think that's going to be 3.3, 3.2 meters. Maybe we go 3.3. Okay, now it's always really easy for us to change this at another point, so that's fine. And also keep in mind, too, that you might want to create variations of this. So this is just one wall here, but you might want to duplicate this and do a 1 meter wall, right? You might want to do something like a 3 meter wall. Okay. So it really just depends on what you need, what you want, how much flexibility you want to have, things like that. For our purposes here, I'm going to try to keep everything just as simple as we can and as few pieces as we can. So I'm just going to go with just this one 2 meter wall. It's going to be 3.3 meters high and then 0.1 meter thickness. So let's go ahead and name that our wall. Okay, next thing I want to do is go back to our reference here. I want to create this runner across the bottom here, something like this. All right, so we're going to start with a cube again. Go into front view here, get another cube, and you know the drill. We're going to just bring everything up to our pivot point, or go ahead and set our pivot points. Okay, now of course you can do this after as well, setting your pivot point. I just try to get in the habit of doing it right away so I don't have to worry about it later. All right, let's bring that up to right there. And some people will have the wall attached to this piece. We could do that. We might even do that. I like to just always kind of try and think ahead. If I might want to use this wall without that bottom piece. So that's something to think about. So for right now, I'm going to keep them separated, but then we can always join them together if we want. All right, now for this, I'm going to bring this into 0.1 there, so 0.1 meter. And then I think we'll bring this down to 1 meter. So we're going to have a 1 by 2 meter runner here. Now, the next thing I want to do is create a little bit of a molding on the bottom here, and then also a handrail area here. Okay, and we could do this a lot of different ways, but I think what I will do is let's go into the right side view so that we can see it like this. And let's add a loop here, and let's bring that down. Actually, I'm going to just hit GG, slide this all the way down, and then I'm going to bring this up 2 clicks by holding Control to where we have it there. So it's like 0.2 meters up. And then from here out, I think we'll extrude this. So let's go here, and we're just going to extrude that to maybe about, let's go 0.05. By the way, you can look at how far you're moving something up here. So I use that a lot. You can also just count, of course. You can also just, when you extrude something, if we extrude this out, I could just move it however far, click down here, and then change however far I want it to go as well. Lots and lots of different ways to do this. But for us, I think 0.05 will work well. Okay, and then I want to create a little bit of a shape here for the molding. We could just go ahead and bevel this and just do something like this, and that would work fine. But I want to just create a little bit more unique shape to where we have something that is kind of a little bit more like this and then comes down and then goes out like that. So kind of a little bit of an S shape there. And to do that, let me just think how I want to do this. I think I will actually bring this back. Let me select this entire face, and let's bring this back to maybe there. And then I'll add another control loop here. And let's go maybe just like that. And then I'll select this bottom part and we'll extrude that out. Okay. And then let's just see what this looks like if we bevel all of this. Anytime you're beveling, make sure that you have applied your scale. You can see here that my scale is already applied, but if it's not, just make sure that you hit Control A, apply your scale so that your X and Y and Z are all one. Otherwise, you will get some weird results when you try to bevel. So if we do something kind of like that, okay, we can see what that looks like. I like that, but I don't love that. I think I want to change this shape a little bit here. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit more. And I actually think I'm going to bring all this in to right there. So we did change this, so we're like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we have something like that. And let's just try and see how that looks now. We do something kind of like that. Okay, and yeah, I think I like that a lot more. Okay, now don't worry about the edges here. This is not ideal where we have these giant n-gons like this, but we're just going to delete these edges anyway, so it's not really going to matter. So we just will delete these, or delete these faces, I guess I should say. Do that on the other side here as well. Oops. And then we could also delete all of this bottom part here. And the back as well, because we do not need that. So go ahead and delete that. Okay, now let's make a little bit of a railing here. So let's go into the right view again. Let's add another loop here. And I'm going to do the same thing to what we did down here. So I'm going to press GG, slide this all the way up. And then I will just bring this down, holding control. Let's go down 0.1 meter, like that. And then we'll extrude this out. Maybe about like that. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and delete these faces. Okay, we can also just dissolve that edge there. And now I want to create some ridges in here. Now we could do this in Substance and just kind of give the illusion that we have that. And to be honest, it would probably work quite well. But let's just add some in there just for fun. Let's see, let's do 5. I think I will go like that. And then I'm going to bevel these. So Control B. And then I'm going to do, I think, something like that. And then I'm going to select these faces in here. And then I'm just going to push them in just a little bit to where we get that. So then we have kind of that look there. And then I think I will also bevel this top part. Okay, just to make that a little bit smoother there. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I don't think I'm going to worry about the bottom. It's really just that main top part that I want to give that shape to there. Okay, so let's create some molding at the top here. All right, so we're going to do kind of the same thing. We're going to start with a cube. And for this, I'm going to bring my pivot point to the top. And this will probably make sense, if not already, in just a minute. So I'll still put my pivot point at the corner there. But I want this to be like that so that I can move this and align this with the top of my wall here. Okay, and I'm just going to move this up. I think I'm going to go 0.3 meters there. And I want to make this a square, basically. Or on the edge, I want it to be a square. So I'm going to move it to there. So I have 0.3 by 0.3 by 2 meters there. Okay. And now let's go ahead and bevel this. Now you can look up online or find real world reference of different outlines of molding. There are actually some things that are built in that we can use as well. So if I go ahead and just bevel, doesn't really matter how much or any of the settings here. If we change our profile type down here to custom, we have a few different presets here. And if we look at crown molding, or sorry, not crown molding, what is it? Cornice molding? Yeah, cornice molding. That is a pretty nice shape there that I like. Now we're going to need quite a few more segments, as you can see here. And then we can also play around with the width here. So maybe we kind of go with something like that. And I'm not too worried about my vertex count here, so I'm going to add quite a few here, quite a few segments. And I think that's going to be good. I can probably, yeah, I'll be able to dissolve this and this. We could clean this up a little bit more if we wanted to, but again, I'm not too worried about how many polys this is going to be here. So I will go ahead and dissolve these edges. We have something like that. We can shade smooth and just get a nice look to that there. Okay, now just looking at this, I think this might be a little too wide on the x-axis here for what I want. So I could do a couple of different things. I could just redo this, but I kind of like, I think I'm happy with how tall it is here. So I'm just gonna size this on the X and just bring this in. Let's see. Okay, so looking at this just a bit, I am gonna change just a few things here. I want to move this in a little bit, first of all. Maybe to about there. And I'm going to bring this bottom up just a little bit as well. Maybe even go one more over. Again, this is all just feel. There's no real rhyme or reason to this. Just kind of whatever I'm liking the look and feel of. All right, so let's bevel that again. And because we've already done that, we've got our bevel saved in there. And you can see we could actually maybe just go all the way like that, which I think I'll be fine with. Okay. Yeah, I think I like that. All right, so let's go ahead and apply that. And because we did, I don't know if you actually saw that. When we beveled that, you can see we actually have an edge right here. And if I go all the way up like that, now we technically have two edges here. You can see that. So I want to be careful whenever that happens, because now we have those edges are overlapping. So I'm going to just select everything, hit M to merge, and then we're going to merge by distance. And you can see there it removed 4 vertices. So it removed that one, that one, that one, and that one. So just keep an eye out for that. That's a very, very easy thing to do when you're first getting started in modeling. You will very frequently have overlapping vertices like that, and it's very easy to forget or just not even notice. And then you'll go to import that into Unreal Engine, and it'll probably give you some errors or cause some shading issues and things like that. All right, we can also delete these faces on the side here. And then we could delete this back face as well, because we don't need that. So we'll delete that. I will leave the top here. Even though we can't see that, we still will have that kind of open to the ceiling. So we will want that for just so light doesn't shine through and things like that. All right, and we can go ahead and shade smooth that. And I think that looks good. All right, so just zooming out a little bit, we can kind of see what we're starting to build. And at this point, you know, you might want to even duplicate this and try and start kind of building your shape out. Okay, now the next thing that I want to do is I want to create a pillar. And let's look at some of our reference here. So as you can see here, they have kind of these pillars here. Let's see. Got some other pillars here. This just kind of breaks up the wall, and I like just not having just like the straight flat wall that goes all the way across. There's some more here. So I want to do something like that, okay? Now, what I want to do is ideally, let's just kind of look at our molding here. I want to basically continue this molding shape around the pillar that we're going to have. All right, so I want to think about that. And then I also want to do the same thing with our top molding here as well. All right, so for our actual pillar, let's just start with a cube. Okay, and like everything else, we're going to go ahead and set our pivot point to be right there. Now for this, I think I will maybe keep this in the center because when I put a pillar in here, I want it to snap right to the center of, I guess, in between the two edges of these walls here. So it's even length on both sides, if that makes sense. I mean, kind of how it is right now. But if we look at it from the right view here, first of all, let's go ahead and bring it up to where it's at the bottom of the floor there. And let's go ahead and figure out how wide we want this to be. I'm thinking maybe 0.4 meters, something like that. Okay, and then we'll bring this in here as well. Okay, that might be a little too thick. Let's do 0.3. Let's try 0.3. Whoops. On both our X and our Y there. Now again, when I change the dimensions here, make sure that we fix the scale here, because you can see that changed. So I need to apply my scale. And now what I want to do is, of course, we need to change the height here, but I want to take a look at the bottom here because I need to take, let's see, this part, this bottom molding, and I need to continue that around. And this can be a little tricky. So let's kind of think about how we want to do this. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this with Control D, and then I'm going to hit P by selection, and then I have that as a separate piece now. Okay. If we select just both of these, let's see here. Actually, I'm going to duplicate this again so I have that piece there to kind of use as a guide. And then I need to rotate this by 90. And what I want to have happen here is this needs to basically snap right at the edge of this, right? So if I go in here or actually we can leave it like this. If I hit G to move, I want to move it on the Y axis. So I'm going to lock it to Y. Then I'm going to hit B. That's going to give me this little gizmo here that I can select different things here. What I want to do is select a vertex on the edge. And now it's going to look for something to snap to. Okay. And so what I can actually do is select the edge here. And if I click that, then it's maybe kind of hard to see in this view. But yeah, there you can see there. So it is now snapped right on the edge, and I know that is right on the edge of that, okay? I guess the other thing that I could do, this might even actually be easier, is I could go ahead and just bring my cursor to there, and then I could set my origin to right there, and then I could easily snap that to this edge here. The next thing that I want to do is I want to move it on the x-axis and snap it to this edge or the corner here. So I'm going to do the same thing, snap it like that, okay? And then as far as the length goes, I think what I want to do with this pillar is just make this be able to be used from either direction. So that means that I need to have this molding go all the way around. Okay. So let's grab all of the edges here, and I will slide this in, and then we'll do the same thing. So I'm going to G to move only on the X, press B, and I'll grab this, and then we'll just snap that to right there. Okay. All right. Now, this piece should be exactly 0.3 meters, which it is. Now, it's a little confusing because we have rotated this and we haven't applied the rotation. So it's telling me that the Y is 0.3 when you can see that on the X, it's actually 0.3. So if we apply the rotation, then you'll see that it's updated and it is now correct. Okay. Now the hard part is this corner, right? How do we kind of fix that? So I could duplicate this again, rotate this like so, another 90 degrees, bring this into right there, and then I need to fill this in, right? Now I need to decide if I want this to be a perfect corner here, or if I want this to be a little bit more rounded. And what we could do is we could join these together like this. And then I could select this, and I could select this, and we could bridge edge loops. We could add cuts in here, but you can see this gets super, super messy here. So don't really want to do that. And I also don't really like the way that that looks. So what I need to do is I'm actually just going to undo this a little bit until we have two pieces again. I need to use the shear tool, or I don't have to, but that's one way that we can do it, and that's the way that I'm going to do it. So I'm going to select this edge, and I'm going to go to the shear tool here, and then we get this, and this will allow me to do something like this. And what I'm looking for is a perfect 45-degree angle. Now, if you look up here, right up here, you'll see that it says right now minus 1.7. What we're looking for is 1, or minus 1 in this case. All right, so you don't really even have to worry about getting it perfect because you can just come down here and type it in. So I'm going to do minus 1, and now that is a perfect 45-degree angle. Okay. But you'll see that it has moved everything, so we need to move this to where it is perfectly lined up with that, okay? Now, that's not super hard to do because we have been doing this before, so I can just do G, X, B, grab my vertex, and then snap it to the edge there, all right? And then we'll do the same thing here as well. So we'll shear this edge. Okay, just to 1. Okay, and then we will G, Y, because I'm moving this way. B, grab this, and I don't have to grab this. I could grab down here. I could even grab just this line or this edge and do it like that. Okay, so you can do that different ways. All right, and now we have a perfectly lined up corner with a corner there at a perfect 45-degree angle, and that looks good. All right. Now, I could just make 2 more of these and do the exact same thing, but what we can do is just go ahead and join these, and then even though I joined these, that doesn't mean that we actually welded these together, because you can see these are all separate, so I need to merge those. So I'm going to select everything, merge by distance. All right, now instead of basically having to do this 4 more times, I am going to use the mirror modifier to just do this for us. So the important part here is I need to, well, if we go ahead and put a mirror on here, let's see, mirror, you see that we'll get that. So I need to move my pivot point to where it's in the center, and then I also need to move this edge to where it's in the center. So let's look at this from the right side, and let's go into transparency mode there, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring this over. Again, since we've got everything snapping to the grid, I know that that is where I need to move it, half of 0.3, 0.15. And then the only thing that I need to do now is just set my pivot point to where this will update. So I'm going to set it down here, bring my cursor to there, set origin to 3D cursor, and we have that, okay? And then we'll do the same thing on the X. Okay, so let's look at it from the front view there. And I need to move this edge 0.15. Okay, and then we'll mirror on the Y. But we need to update our pivot point again. So in this case, what I'll do is let's do this. Let's set our pivot point to the center of this. So bring our cursor there, set origin to 3D cursor. And actually, I didn't really need to set my origin there. I meant to set my origin from this. So set origin to 3D cursor, and then that is good there. I hope that made sense. I kind of went through that a little quickly. Basically, when you're mirroring, you just need to, you're mirroring off of wherever your origin is, or you can select an object. So technically, I could have selected that as our object. That would have worked as well. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. We'll basically run through that again with the molding, so I'll try to kind of explain that maybe a little bit better as we go. All right, but anyway, that should be pretty much perfect for what we need. So now we just have a continuous piece of molding that's going to go across there. Now we do have, you can see a little bit of Z fighting here. There's no real great way to get around that when you're creating a modular asset like this. Obviously, you could create one continuous piece here, but then that would not be modular, right? So that's just something that you kind of have to deal with. And it's not a huge issue. I mean, you'll see this in tons of games, even AAA games. They will still have a little bit of Z fighting here. And what I mean by Z fighting, if you don't know what that means, or if you've never heard that, you can see how we have that little bit of artifacting happening there, and it's just where you have a plane that is overlapping another plane like that, and it's kind of trying to fight for which plane is going to be shown with the camera. Now, the way that I usually get around that in Unreal Engine, if it's even a noticeable issue, I will just slightly change the height of one of my meshes. So, you know, I might just move this down like ever so slightly. And in Unreal Engine, when we have this textured, you won't be able to notice it at all. Okay. Okay, so let's continue on with our pillar here. And let's go ahead and change the height of this because we want to make this all the way up to the top. Or we might not go all the way up to the top, but for right now, we will. Now for our molding, we're going to do kind of the same thing here. So this will actually be a little bit easier because this is already separated. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this. And let's think about how I want to do this. If I just move this to the edge there, and then actually let's leave it like that because we're going to need it in the center for when we begin mirroring this. And let's just take a look at just these. So I'm going to select just these two here and then isolate those to where I have that like that. And really, I don't need to even measure anything here because I know that this is already measured correctly, the pillar here. And I just need to shear my edge and then line this up. So let's go into edit mode for this guy. Go into X-ray, shear. I'm going to select that edge and we're going to go to where we have 1, which is going to be 45 degrees. Okay, and then I want to move this down and then snap it to the edge here. So let's do it like this. Let's do G, Y, B, and I'll grab this vertex here and snap it just like that. Okay. Now, what I did with the molding, I'm going to do this slightly different just to show you kind of another way that you can do this. I can, instead of taking another piece here, I can just extrude this out on the X axis. Okay. And I don't know if this will be correct. Let's see. If I go out 0.3, that's to the edge there. I don't think this will be correct, but it's fine. I just want to do, let's see. I want to size S, X, 0. That will flatten that out to where it's all even on the x-axis. But now I need to get this right in the center of this. Or actually, I don't even have to, because I'll show you what's going to happen here. First of all, let's set our origin to our 3D cursor. Okay. And now if we go ahead and mirror this, mirror, and then we want to do the Y as well. So the Y is perfect, but we have this edge here. But we can very easily just fix this, and then we can also go ahead and enable clipping here. And then if I just move that right into that, it's just going to automatically merge that together like that. So we don't have to worry about measuring it or anything like that. And we're good to go. Okay, and now we have that really nice, just continuous molding that'll go all the way around. And then you can see as we grab another set here and just drag that over, and that's going to look really nice for us there. Okay, so I think that's going to be a good place for us to stop for our first part. In the next part, I think we will work on the door frame, the door area. That will be not too hard for that. Then we'll also do some different walls with a cutout for a window. And maybe we'll try and do 2 different styles of windows as well, just to show you a couple of different things. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be back with more.